In today's episode, we discuss part 2 of When the Night Comes Falling by Howard Bloom. How did Kaylee afford her car? And what's up with the FBI? Did this crime happen because of opportunity or a rage-filled plan? Tune in for our banter of these topics. This is part 2 of a 6-part series, and we hope you will join us on this journey. As always, everything we discuss is for entertainment and is speculation. Please like and subscribe, and definitely join our discussion in the comments. If you're ready, let's get into it. Welcome back to Typically Unique. I'm Kim Aponte, and I'm here with my husband, Carlos.
Hello. And yesterday we did part 1 of the Howard Bloom book, and it was about mostly the car ride with Koberger's father, Michael. Mm-hmm. And but you did mention something in the last podcast that you wanted to bring some facts to this podcast that you were talking about the last one about a theocracy, and there was some documentary or something. Did you get a chance to look that up, and what is that?
I did. In the book When the Night Comes Falling by Howard Bloom that we're talking about, he talks a lot about the Christ Church in Moscow, Idaho, and that they are driven to turn the town into a town that's run by their church. And that reminded me of a true crime podcast that I had listened to. There's lots of podcasts that have covered it. Also a documentary on Netflix that covers it, and it was in Antelope, Oregon, and the religious group were called the Raj Nishi, and it was a cult, a religious cult, but they literally moved into this town. They took over the town from 1981 to 1988, and a lot of crazy, horrible things happened during that time. There were poisonings in public restaurants. Like, it's a crazy story. So if you just like those true crime stories, I highly recommend checking that out. It's the Raj Nishi. So if you just Google that, you'll find it in Antelope, Oregon.
All right. And you said it was a Netflix documentary, The Wild West or something? Or?
Oh, I looked it up and I tried to print it out and it didn't print at the last minute. I don't have the name of it.
Raj Nishi's. Raj Nishi's. All right. So in this episode, which is part 2 of Howard Bloom's book, When the Night Comes
Falling.
I always want to say calling. I don't know why.
I always want to say falling down.
Okay,
When the night goes falling down. No.
But this part is about the children.
It's called The Children's Story.
Children's Story.
So this part is 7 chapters. So chapter 7 is painting the picture of the house. He starts off with the noise complaints that we've all talked about and looked at all the body cam footage. They're out there. He talks about and describes the same exact scenarios with the police showing up. He describes the one where 2 girls are leaving the party, and I might be wrong, but I thought that everybody thought that was Emma Bailey leaving the party. Like, that was evidence of her being at that house. He mentions her in other parts of the book, but he does not mention her there. And it's the one where there's the other one where boys are answering the door. None of the roommates are home. He talks about the zip ties and
drinking
the game
games,
that they played with the zip ties.
So what's the significance of that? What would you say is the significance of adding that to the book?
To describe it as a party house.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. There you go.
Yep, that's what he did. So then the next chapter is about the girls signing the lease and deciding to live into the house together. And he describes it as all of them as one group going in to sign a lease, and he makes it seem like that's the way the house was rented. Like, it's one lease, one cost, you divvy it up.
So this is an inside joke, probably, for just you and I.
Uh-oh.
Because I snickered through this whole them signing the lease together, because you and I have gone back and forth, even on some of our previous podcasts about the Idaho 4, about how the house was turned over.
Yes.
Was it subleased? And
Yes.
was Emma Bailey there? And, was she part of this group? And who was the carryover from the previous group to get this group together? And, we put all this energy and time into, these people got snuck in and they were subleading and
talking about it.
No, we were bantering. It was a little bit more than talking.
But we didn't do any research.
Right. But at the end of the day, they just all went together and signed the lease. And this is what I was kind of saying, I guess for me was, leases come up. Leases come due, and you can sublease and stuff like that, but there's going to be an expiry date and another, initiation date for some of these leases. So it makes total sense. But man, you and I could not connect on that at all in the past. So
I guess this book helped me think about it a different way, and I think both can be true. So I think the house is rented as, here's the cost of the house. The individual tenants sign on to it, but they're splitting up the cost of that.
Sure.
He described it as there was a realtor there, maybe parents were there, like they all did it as a group. But then, to your point, during that year, if things come up, recently people have even talked about online that, Kaylee wasn't living in the house, so she was trying to find a subleaser. So both can be true. And we had talked about before, you were pushing me hard about who was the carryover from the house. And I do think Maddie had lived there before. So I think she was the constant, but I don't know.
I guess the point of all this, the inside joke of it all, and the reason why I was snickering, unbeknownst to the folks who watch this show, that if I make a point to you and I say, hey, Kim, look at it this way, you will listen to it, but you won't believe it
I have
fully.
to hear it from another source.
There needs to be a third party that corroborates whatever I say. Like, oh, the sun is not shining today. I don't believe you. And someone else will have to tell her the sun is not shining. So I snickered a little bit during this section.
Yes, I get it.
Because as when someone else says it, then you would believe it more.
I get it. I need verification, though.
She needs verification.
Okay, so he's talking about how a lot of the girls are from the same sororities. Like there's two different sororities. Both of those sororities had been on probation, and one of them, I think, had resolved their issues or were on the path to resolving them, but one was still in trouble with like the National Greek Council and everything. So I did look that up a little bit, and they were both in trouble for violating health and safety violations. That's just kind of Greek road terminology for they were partying too much. There were drugs, substances, hazing. It covers all those kinds of topics. But one of their sororities was still like under the gun. So it's interesting that some of them were living in those houses and were like, peace out, like we're out of here. So were they personally in trouble, or he described it in the book as no one wants to live in a house that's going to be under the radar like that. So that would give you added reason to want to live off campus.
And I almost felt like, and everything you say is I heard as well, but I think I also heard him say that some girls, maybe not these particular ones, but sometimes they kind of grow out of that, like I want to live in a sorority house.
Yeah.
And they want to kind of, like, hey, I'm a, junior or senior, and, it's like I need to put this aside and live, on my own or in a house with less people and rules and all that's crazy.
We see that as a reason, but he was kind of making it seem like they wouldn't want to be in that sorority house anymore.
Right.
So then he goes into describing each of the girls and Ethan, and it really, my thought was, he really read social media and everything that's been talked about. The research was done for him, right?
Yeah.
All the deep dives had been done, and he was just regurgitating back a lot of the facts that we already knew.
And I want to clarify one thing because this may come up later, but just before we start getting into the individuals, we're talking about everybody going signing the lease. The night of the murders, and we practiced this earlier, the night of the murders, how many people were actively living in the house?
Oh, yeah.
The night of the murders. Could you answer that question?
4.
Could you name those people?
Yes. So Bethany's in the bottom.
Okay.
Xana and Dylan are on the second floor, and Maddie is on the third floor.
Okay. And the person that was with Maddie on the third floor the night of the murders was?
Kaylee.
And she used to be...
She's still on the lease.
Still on the lease. Yeah. She used to live there.
Yes, but she had moved out recently.
She had recently moved out. You had just mentioned in this episode that she was looking for a subleaser. And so there was only 4 people actively living in the house. A lot of people went through the house.
Right. And Ethan probably stayed there a lot, but he's not on the lease. He's not supposed to be there. But
and the one person who was on the lease had moved out and was looking for a subletter. So they were 4 people at the time of the murder. Okay. So I just want to establish that foundation maybe for a little bit later.
Okay.
All right. I think you know where I'm going with this.
I do.
Okay.
So he just describes each person, and he starts with Dylan and paints her as a naivety about her, just because he made her seem very kind, very giving. People could go to her if they needed things, having a very protective father, and that she was kind of like her father. So that's what he said about Dylan. Talks about Xana and her troubled youth. You know, ever since she was an infant, her mom had 40 arrests, and eventually, you got to serve time. She even got in trouble for putting her 2 daughters, Xana and her sister, in a dangerous situation. Her dad was he was involved with meth, he said, and he had served a short jail time. So these girls were looking at living in foster care, like in the system, and they had an aunt that came in and took them. Yeah. So he described all that. Just how, she was very athletic in the sports she played, and she was a confident person. Then he talks about Ethan, and just mostly about, his high school experience was during COVID, and that he's the life of the party. Everything that is said on social media, and that he was in Sigma Chi. Then he takes that opportunity to kind of describe the Sigma Chi house. So Ethan's in Sigma Chi, and just described it as, dirty and cramped quarters, typical frat house, though. I mean, I had been in frat houses when I was in college, so he's not lying. And then he talks about how they met. So they met at a party. Both were very close with both their families. And something that I didn't know, others out there might know, is that he said Xana had a special picture of Ethan with the tulips, because Ethan had worked at a tulip farm, and that she kept it in her drawer. So I thought that was sweet. So that was chapter 9.
Just maybe another foundational question. So Sigma Chi was the fraternity that he was a part of?
Yes.
Was any of his other family members a part of that fraternity as well?
His brother.
Mm-hmm. Twin of their triplets. Mm-hmm. So his twin triplet,
His
whatever.
triplet. They call it a triplet.
Yeah, his triplet was also part of that house. And was that the same house that has been part of this conspiracy theory that, they could have orchestrated or helped cover up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's the same fraternity.
And his brother.
Yes. I know why you're asking.
Okay.
I know.
Okay.
But I tell him we've heard it all in the true crime community. So we don't put anything past anybody. But yes, that makes it a more reserved kind of a theory.
Yes.
I get that.
All right. Because, and I guess for, the people listening to this, the reason why I'm asking a lot of these questions is because I hear a lot of things that give me some pause. Like, that kind of makes sense. I understand that. And you hear everything that is pro about that argument. But I don't hear in the community the con about that argument. So,
about the fraternity being involved.
Yeah, or any of the theories that are out there, right? I just hear like, you got to look at this and you got to look at this and you got to look at this and this is possible and, you can't put it past anybody, and all that. And I like to hear both sides.
Well,
if I was not a guilter, if I was a pro-burger, I still would want to hear the other side, Well,
I don't know if there always is another side until it runs to a dead end, until you're like vetting it out and you're like, okay, that doesn't track. So that will lose traction.
What doesn't track for me right at the outset with Sigma Chi is you're saying that the members of that, including the man's brother, was part of a conspiracy to kill. And you're saying, well, you can't put anything past anybody. But that's a big leap. You're starting off with a pretty big leap.
It is, but it doesn't mean, I don't know how many hundreds of members they would have had, but they would have hundreds of members. Not everybody's going to know everything. And look, we've got 2 sororities in trouble for health and safety violations, which includes drugs. So it's not far-fetched to say that. Nobody's implying the brother knew anything, but, because probably not everybody in that house would know everything. So that's how I take it.
Okay. Fair enough.
So chapter 10 and 11. Chapter 10 is about Kaylee and Maddie, and we all know their history, how they knew each other from when they were little. The same thing from, everything out there that we already know.
I think the one thing that was cute about that was they were hyphenated, right? It was Kaylee, Maddie.
Yeah.
They were 2 people, but it was a 1-person hyphenated name, because they were always around each other and, and all that. And I thought that was kind of a cute way to describe it. Again, probably taking some, liberties in this book, but, that was well written. It was almost an homage to their relationship, in stating that. So,
and something that I heard recently on social media, so I would have to vet it out, but because it was a lot of people talk about you're so close of friends, but they joined 2 different sororities. Now he doesn't talk. He tells that in the book that they joined 2 different sororities, but I heard on social media from a follower that usually does her due diligence in checking things out, that Kaylee was a legacy to the sorority she got into. So like if your mother and your sister were in that sorority, you're kind of like, it's like an automatic given, and Maddie didn't get in. So therefore she joined another one. Yeah. So that, when I heard that recently, I was like, oh, okay. And then he talks about how Kaylee was graduating early. So typically it would be a spring graduation for most graduates, but she was graduating early in December. I graduated late in December. Okay, so then he talks about how Maddie met Jake at a sorority event.
Who's Jake?
Her boyfriend.
Okay.
Long-term boyfriend. They were from the same town, went to the same high school, but he was older. Sound familiar? Mm-hmm. That's our story. But they, hung out and re-met each other in college and started dating. And then it talks about, he describes Kaylee and Jack. That's her boyfriend. He described their relationship as volatile. Like break up, get back together, break up, get back together. And that they were on and off together for 5 years. And then recently, up until this event, Kaylee had broken up with him a few weeks before, like 3 weeks before or so.
So we started with Maddie and Jake.
Yes.
And did they break up and get back together? Or they've been just together?
They had a loving relationship.
Okay. Kaylee and Jack had the volatile one where they okay, all right, because you skipped to that one pretty quickly. So
sorry,
no, that's all right. That's just me trying to make sense of.
These are the parts of the book that doesn't really have anything new.
No.
It's everything that's been on social media, everything everybody's talked about to death on all their episodes and deep dives and everything. So
yeah, what's the nugget in all this? Because when I was listening to it, and I kind of tuned out a little bit, right? I could care the less about who their boyfriend was and how the relationship was, more or less because I'm thinking about just the principles themselves. And unless it has some direct tie, I think I perked up a little bit when they went to the bar that night and one was talking about...
Oh, that's coming up in the next chapter.
That's when I perked up a little bit, but all this, it was like, I know. How did you feel?
For interest's sake, but I do think you cannot write about this crime without honoring the victims. Okay, so he ends that chapter with talking about how Kaylee was going to be moving to Texas to work at a marketing firm starting in February. And then he moves into the night of the event and just what they were doing. So he does talk about the expense of the Range Rover that Kaylee had purchased and how she could have afforded that, kind of speculates on that.
Yeah.
You and I have had some conversations about that.
We've had some conversations about that. So I was joking with you the other day. You're like, how could she afford, you were saying, how could she afford this vehicle, and all that. And I had said, well, when we purchased the vehicle, how much did we put down? Right? We didn't have to put anything down. I also found out she didn't buy the vehicle. He says she leased it. So
I didn't pay attention to that detail.
Yeah, I hear things, but it said she leased it. So my assumption is, you might put $500 down or whatever, and then you lease the vehicle. And then his point was, she wasn't leasing a brand new vehicle. She was leasing.
Yeah, it was used.
It was a used vehicle. It was a little bit older. So, and I think, and this is what I wanted to ask you, when we were having that debate about, she got this new car and wanted to show it off, new to her, not new to the world, was the speculation that she received some money and come into some money and this is how she afforded it? What was the conspiracy around the vehicle? That I don't think I heard a lot about it, but what were you hearing about that?
Yeah, the speculation was, how does a poor college student afford to go out and get a car on their own? Any car.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't able to do that. And I just think people are reflecting on their own experience. Who does that? Like, you're working in college to pay the rent.
Yeah.
Put groceries in the refrigerator.
For sure.
Maybe some clothes if you're, and fund your weekends. He's also going to talk later, when he talks about the investigation in later chapters. They actually dove into this car and who who were previous owners and things like that. So, that was apparently a concern. But Kaylee's parents described her as always being like a hustler, trying to make extra money. So maybe she just did that and saved up her money and was able to do that.
Yep.
But this is just about that night. So Kaylee comes back to town. She's showing off her car, the basic events. Ethan and Xana are at the Sigma Chi house. Then they go home. Kaylee and Maddie are at the bar.
Do you want to talk about the bar a little bit?
Sure.
Okay. So the way the author made it seem like, there was many places to go, in this very small college town.
Yes.
And it was probably intentional that they went to the bar in question.
The Corner Club.
The Corner Club. Do you feel it was intentional that they went to the Corner Club?
I have not heard any other bar in that town mentioned, so
okay.
I know there are others.
Okay.
But this seemed to be like everybody has their own like go-to hangout place, right? He described it as a sports bar. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen inside the whole entire place. What the image that has been online, it didn't look like a sports bar to me. It looked like a dive bar, but
which some of the best bars are the dive bars.
Some of the best.
Some of the best. But I think when I say intentional, what I was thinking intentional in my mind is because the roommate of the boyfriend of the relationship that is not overly stable,
right,
works there,
and the boyfriend was there.
Okay.
The ex-boyfriend.
Yes. Okay.
So
it was intentional that they went there, and I know that from that, when they were caught on camera after or before the grub truck,
yep.
Stating, "What did you tell Jack or Jake or John?"
What did you tell Adam?
Adam. Okay. Who's Adam?
The bartender and the roommate of her ex-boyfriend.
Okay. So, what did you tell Adam? Mm-hmm. I think spawned a lot of conspiracies as well.
Yes.
Okay. Would you be able to speak to some of that in this episode, even though we are talking about the Howard Bloom book? Like, what do you know about that? Why was that? I heard it a lot, and people analyzed that 10 seconds worth of sound, because we heard their voices.
Right.
Why was that so analyzed, and why was there such a big deep dive into that?
So you can clearly hear Kaylee say, "Maddie, what did you say to Adam?" Like, I don't think there's a doubt about that.
Okay.
The guy they were with, Jack S., a lot of people will say he's saying they're going to get you girls for that. Before that, I don't hear that when I listen to it.
Okay.
A lot of people have, they slow it down, blow it up, listen to it,
Yep.
whatever. There was a lot of speculation online that it was about her finding a stash and flushing it or getting rid of it somehow.
Okay.
So that was one of the first theories that was talked about.
Okay.
Now the parents will say, because according to them, they spoke to Adam and they spoke to the ex-boyfriend, and they say, "Oh, it was just, college girl stuff, and Kaylee was really feeling bad that her and Jack had broke up, and she still wanted to get back together with him, and so Maddie was just telling him that."
Oh, okay.
Those are the two main ideas. There's a lot of other ones out there, but
gotcha. Okay.
Yes. Then he talks about the actual event. So the white car, passing the house, everything we know about that. He did mention a 7-inch blade.
Yeah, that
haven't
was
heard an exact measurement of anything like that. So,
and even mentioned the sheath.
Yeah,
he's carrying this 7-inch weapon in this sheath.
Yeah.
Which was probably for dramatic purposes, but still.
He really went overboard in this chapter of like pretending to be in the mind of the person doing this and, speculating that, I want to go in, but I don't. I want to leave. I don't want to stop. There was a lot of that.
My car is, it's pulled to the house.
I'm being pulled in that direction to do this.
Right.
Yeah. He does say that he thinks Maddie's the target. Like he clearly says that there was a plan, go to the third floor, Maddie's the target.
Yes.
He used some words that I don't know if they're intentional or not, but I picked up on them because I'm like, what is he saying about this exact, events? Does he know something? Or does he not? And he's just
being dramatic,
writing like a writer. But he said Kaylee crumpled to the floor.
Yes.
But her parents have spoke out, and they pretty recently, a few months ago, came out and said that she was actually kind of propped up like in the corner. She was trapped between the wall and where she had been sleeping.
And I think Bloom mentioned, and I would have to go back and hear it exactly because I can kind of remember a little bit of what he said, but it almost like she tried to make an escape, and that escape got her wedged between, like, I don't know if he said the bed and the wall or
the bed and the wall
in a precarious position, but he's telling a little bit more detail than I have heard. I know the community has heard a lot, but it was just a little bit more detail than I had originally heard. Also, him saying in the book that Maddie was the target. Boy, I can't wait to hear more about that, in the real trial, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, this is all kind of neat and, it's good to have discussion about, but in the real trial, I want to know which way he turned on 270, and I want to know who was the target or what the motive was. Those are like the two important things that should be in their opening statements to satisfy me.
I know.
But go ahead. Sorry.
There's a couple things that have happened recently that are making me start to think that because when you had talked about 4 people in the house, so there's only 4 people in the house, and then that means only one person could be in that bedroom. And then one of my favorite YouTubers has recently started going down that trail too. So that she could have been the target. So I'm curious to learn more about that.
Yes,
because,
in the real trial.
What do you mean?
In the real trial, you want to learn more about that. Like you want to hear, show me the facts.
That's a year away, so I want to see. Like,
tell me whatever you can now.
I want to see what the deep dives are on, YouTube true crime.
Gotcha. No. Okay, fair enough. No, I get you. Yeah, even speculation, I'd certainly listen to it, but I think those are the 2 pillars of this case right now. Where was the defendant? Did he turn right or left on 270?
Right.
And whoever committed this crime, what was the motivation? Who was the target?
Yeah.
And was there collateral damage, here, or what's the motive, right? So either who's the target or what's the motive? Either one of those two. I think those are the 2 big questions that both the prosecution and the defense and the true crime community should get out there, and let's start answering those questions. I think everything else falls in place.
I have seen some people online that are like, I know where some cameras are that could, and I hope that they saved, I've been thinking about that recently. Like if an event, if I owned a business and an event like this happened within like 30 miles of me, like, wouldn't you grab your cameras and like save it just in case? I think a lot would. Maybe not everybody. There's some people that are aloof, but there's gotta be camera footage saved. I hope.
Probably is. And things may come out as the trial begins. Things may come out, that people had saved on their phones and didn't realize, because it's only been 10 homes that I keep hearing that have produced. The rest of the cameras are business, but there has to be more than 10 Blink cameras in a 20-mile radius in
so
Moscow.
if you lived in that neighborhood and you had a camera, but no police came to ask you for it, would you get rid of it? Heck no, I'd be saving that, making copies,
but
going through it to see if there's anything on it.
But if they fall under the aloof, as you were saying, or elderly,
there are people that don't pay attention.
But the good thing about that is it does get stored somewhere, Usually in a cloud somewhere. Yeah, so there may be, if they wanted to go back and take a look, they probably could.
Could be. Yeah, then if I was that defense, I'd be asking for everything. The only other thing in this chapter that, like I said, I was looking for words, and, I don't want to be graphic and talk about the victims like this, but he just mentioned Ethan's neck. And I thought, why do that? Like, I hadn't heard that, but just to use that term, because we don't know anything about the autopsies. We don't know anything about the medical examiner's report. So he must have spoke to somebody, because that's not a literary element. It didn't seem like he was just being unnecessarily descriptive. I thought it was odd that he did that. Or telling. And I
see where you're coming from with that. I took it as he was saying that because the predator and the prey in this case was there was an imbalance, that the prey was actually looked larger, probably more menacing, and this had to happen, this surprise element, and for lack of a better term, it had to be an immediate kill shot, or there would have been a scuffle, or there would have been more to it. Like, this
less
had to be
a chance of being able to get out of there.
Yes. Yeah. So this had to be a very, direct, almost surprise, even though I think at that point, Xana and Ethan were alerted.
Yeah, I think
but
so.
Not fully understanding what was going on. Like, somebody's here, I'm here to help, but that's how I took it. But I also, looking at it through your lens, I see that as well. And that's interesting perspective. He
ended it very dramatically with Brian thinking to himself, I became what I had to become.
Yeah.
So, over the top. Over the top. But.
Yeah.
So the last chapter in part 2 goes back to him driving home. And it's just the part where they're pulled over by the state troopers.
Yeah. So driving home to Pennsylvania, not driving home from the murders to Washington State University.
Throughout this whole novel, he's weaving in this car ride home with his dad, which is a way to structure a story. And so we all know these events, how they got pulled over. There's footage that everybody has seen. I just think at the very beginning when we saw that, it was like, were those on purpose or not? Did they get stopped on purpose or not? Do you remember what you thought about that?
I thought for sure. That's a great question. Thank you. That's absolutely what I thought. I thought they were like, hey, let's check. I think you and I even talked about that they wanted to get a good look at his hands. They wanted to kind of lean into the car with the body camera to like get it. So, and it seemed that what was happening. The officer is right up on them. It's not like he's hanging back and, a lot of them stand like this. And, I mean, he was in it. He was engaged in conversation with both of them. Yes, I thought it was orchestrated, and I even applauded whomever sanctioned that to happen. I thought, great idea. Let's covertly see what's going on here.
So then that was the next series of speculations was who would have done that, right?
Right.
So he does address this later in the book. I don't want to talk about it right now, but it might be information that is known, but I felt like he knew a little bit more than I had heard, at least, about those stops.
Right.
So Yeah, that was.
And
that
just
was
to
interesting.
recap, we said yesterday that when we first heard about this and people were praising the FBI for like following him across country and making sure they had eyes on him, the
Right.
FBI came out and said, we didn't do anything of the sort.
Exactly. And that, oh my gosh. Yeah, we're going to have a good discussion about this when we
Yes.
get to that part, because how many times have the FBI in this case done that? Like, not us, not us. And then someone else comes out and goes, yeah, it was you.
And
Why are they doing that?
you know, hey, turn over all the information that you have. Well, we've turned over everything we got.
Right.
Well, the FBI's got some. Well, I can't do anything about that. You know,
Right.
I'm giving you what we got. You know,
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion about that. Like, is the FBI hanging them out to dry? Are they in on some fishy stuff? Like, what is it? Because there's something.
There's something going. I
Yeah.
agree with that part of the. You know, it would just be a lot cleaner, easier, nicer if everybody
Turn
was
it all over.
Turn it all over. Just give it all over and work together. This is what we got. This is what you got.
That's
you
what
know,
they're supposed to do.
they were in the same building.
Yeah.
You know, there were some FBI agents in the same building, and they were not telling, you know, the Idaho police that, hey, you know, we're kind of following somebody across country, and you actually got their name from some security guard, but you don't know that,
Well,
you know, supposedly.
I think the FBI had his name and they weren't telling.
That's
like another
exactly what I
thing.
just said. Yeah.
Another thing that they're, you know, holding back.
Yep.
So, and then that, when you say like, oh, then the conspiracy theories start. Well, that's why.
I agree.
Why are they doing that? Why would they be doing that?
And
lots of questions.
And we speculated, you know, is it glory? Is it like what? Like, do they have an award assembly at the end of the year where they pass out trophies that, you know, hey, you know, in the close race between the Idaho State Police and the Moscow Police Department and the FBI had the most information on the Brian Koberg case, so here's your trophy.
Yeah, there's no trophies given
That's
out.
weird. Why?
It
It makes no sense to me.
I don't know why they're doing that. According to the author, he said that the FBI had a team assigned to him and they were tailing him. But like you said, supposedly they came out and said, no, we weren't.
Exactly.
And then he mentions again that a plane is following. He mentions that a few times. And that's how part 2 ends.
Well, a couple things before we end this episode. One is I like the thumbnail you used on the previous episode with the little plane following the car.
Yeah, I know.
That was genius, by the way. So, and Kim does all that. So I think that's awesome. That was cute. I
Thank
loved
you.
it. Very cool. So I keep staring at it. And the other thing, I want to go back to something real quick because we had conversations about this right near, you know, the end of the scene when it was, you know, the murder was taking place. You know, he said that quote about, and I became what I was.
I was meant to become.
I was meant to
something
become.
like that.
You know, we talked about this previously, and we don't have to do a deep dive now, but, you know, we talked about this previously, and I kind of stick behind it a little bit. So I get what Bloom's doing with the book. Okay, you know, we're trying to sensationalize some things for good reading. But I do believe that I feel, my personal opinion, that Koberger had some urges, you know, and again, when urge meets opportunity, that's when some of these crimes happen, these horrific ones, you know, and we talked about in the past Jeffrey Dahmer, who clearly stated in an open interview, I'd had these urges for years and I was just waiting for an opportunity. And I think that's where we got that from. When urge meets opportunity. When he sensationalized that at the end, it's one of two things. You know, if Koberger did this, he's either always had that urge and this was the opportunity, or something happened that infuriated him so greatly with maybe Maddie, right? Because we think that she's a target.
Right.
So if I'm just going to be narrow-minded and think Kohberger did this, it's one of two things. I've always had this urge, and this was the opportunity I was waiting for, or I had a target in mind, and that person wronged me in some way, and I'm going to get my revenge just on a whim, not I've had a lifetime of this thought pattern, and this was the opportunity to take place.
To me personally,
Yes.
Unless you're like a hired assassin, you've probably had that lifelong urge that has built over time. Like that's why they have established several red flags throughout childhood that signal the potential for something like that to happen.
Exactly.
So I think if it was him, I'm not necessarily on that train yet. That, and I said this before in previous episodes, was not an opportunity. That was a target. That was a planned attack. Could be from anger. So I agree with you on that, but that's not like picking up a hitchhiker on the side of the road and now I have an opportunity. It's different to me. I think It was planned out by whoever. A lot of interesting theories out there.
Sure.
But that's how I see it.
And I agree with your assessment, and I guess I should just clarify that this white Elantra or Brian Kohberger's phone was in that area 12 previous times and never pulled the trigger on this, not in a literal sense, but
right.
Never made it happen until he drove by, supposedly, allegedly, and the lights were finally turned off when he was in the area and thought, I've been wanting to do this. This was my 13th trip out here. And the conditions are now finally
no
right.
Party going on.
No
It's
party.
Quiet.
It's quiet. The lights are out. I got my kill kit with me. Gosh, I've been dreaming about this for so long, and here's my opportunity. When urge meets opportunity.
Well, thank you for explaining that, because I still don't agree with that, but I understand why you're saying that now, so I can quit countering that.
No, I agree with your assessment. I think that, I think that's, I wouldn't feel better about either of those being true.
Right.
But I almost feel like that this person who did this was well thought out, and this wasn't going to be the last time. That this was going to happen again somewhere else, sometime else, but this was going to happen because this was well thought out.
See, I think it was well thought out because there was a reason it was being done, so it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen again, as in the urge. Yeah. Maybe happen again if someone messes up like they did, or, that they thought they did, or the message they're trying to send or something like that. But yeah. Yeah.
So I'm curious as to what, folks who are watching this, where do they land, on this? And, I know there's still a bunch of alternate theories that don't lend to this particular discussion, but I guess if we just narrowed it down to this, was this more of whoever went in here and did this, was this systematically planned for a person or persons, or do you think this was just, an opportunity presented itself?
Right. We're asking that question to our viewers.
We're asking that question to our viewers.
Let us know in the comments, please. And there are a couple of channels that are really diving into some documents, trying to figure some things out with a couple of the theories. So I will link them in our show notes too, so you can see what a couple of the routes are that they're thinking.
Sure.
And they really are finding some good evidence. So part 3 is called The Hunter's Story, and I feel like the author used that as a double entendre as the title because this part is going to be about the police officers and their perspective. And a lot of them were hunters, literally hunters of game, but then they're also hunting the killer. So, yeah, I thought
and the next episode could go off the rails a little bit, right? When speaking of law enforcement, because this is where, it's hard to defend, and, so, it could go off the rails for me, but I'm going to hang in there as tough as I can. But you have all the ammunition here in the next episode.
All right, I guess I have to bring it for the next episode.
I'm ready. All right.
So please join us in the comments. Let us know what you think about what Carlos posed, and please like and subscribe. We pleaded last episode that we're 90 away, right? Yes.
As of this taping, how many away are we from our goal of 500 subscribers?
89.
So we got one more subscriber. So if you are not subscribed, please subscribe, because again, it doesn't cost you anything except for a notification when we put out one of these episodes, and we want to get to 500 subscribers. So we will give you an update on our next episode where we're at on our subscribers as well.
We appreciate that, everybody. And I love chatting with everybody in the comments. So I enjoy it. So we hope we will see you back on our next episode, and we'll see you then. Bye.